美元可能会以两种方式失去其在世界经济中的地位，一种是侵占，这是雷达里奥近年来一直鼓吹的理论，就是另一种货币将取代美元，就像美元在1个世纪前取代英镑一样。另一种是退位，即美国奉行退缩的政策，从其全球角色中退缩，对中国的担忧属于侵占阵营。但正如我上期影片讨论的那样，实质内容并不多，更大的威胁是自焚。现在美国正处于非常时期，国家债务总额达到了31.4万亿美元，国会时不时会讨论一个叫做债务上限的问题。很明显，美国即将再次破产，但这么说很抽象，好像和我们个人关系不大。其实不然，今天我主要和大家讨论美国的巨额债务对我们普通人到底意味着什么，美元是否正在自焚，这对储蓄者、投资者和中产阶级意味着什么？重要的是，在这样的环境下，我们要如何自救？大家好，我是你们最喜欢的财经博主墨镜姐一粒沙，原创不易。如果大家能高抬贵手，轻松点赞或者订阅，对我是很大的鼓励和支持。即使你们不喜欢的话，也欢迎留言。今天犹他大学商学院教授庞涛文先生将继续和我们分享他对美国债务上限和经济前景的看法，以及对股市投资、黄金买卖的建议。庞先生曾经是驻香港、加拿大和东德的外交官，也曾经是驻北京大使馆的商务参赞。商务参赞通常是使馆商务处负责人，其外交地位仅次于大使和公使。在我正式开始访谈之前，我先快速地讲讲什么是债务上限，以及美国政府一旦违约带来的后果。所谓的债务上限，就是美国国会限制政府可以借款的金额，一旦达到上限，议员必须上调或暂停债务上限，财政部才能发行更多债券。由于美国政府一直以高额年度赤字运行，所以必须定期解决债务上限的问题。美国印了美元，控制了全球储备货币，这意味着对美国来说，钱很便宜。美国拥有世界上其他任何人都没有的特权。但是如果现在超过债务上限，可能就不是了。如果美国政府违约会怎么样？你甚至都不想去想它，因为后果太糟糕了。如果美国政府不能借款来帮助支付各项到期账单，将不得不暂停某些退休金的支付，暂缓发放或削减士兵和联邦工作人员的工资，或推迟支付利息，税收退款会延迟，政府雇员会休假，国家公园和博物馆甚至会关闭，这将构成违约。如果市场对美国财政部失去信心，将会对美国经济增长产生极为重大的负面影响，甚至可能引发一场金融危机。在过去的几十年中，标普500指数在达成债务上限协议前一个月的平均风股回报率为负 6.5%， 所以股市的波动是不可避免的。根据美联储的会议记录，2011年8月，美联储和财政部官员曾私下制定了一项计划，如果两党无法在债务上限问题上达成一致，将优先按时偿付财政部的债务，推迟支付其他政府账单。财政部在几天内无力支付某些福利金后，标准普尔公司首次取消了美国 3A 信用评级。接下来我们就请庞教授来和我们分享他对债务违约的看法。国会目前看起来对债务上限很难达到共识，让这个很严肃的问题变成政治足球。请问庞教授能否和我们谈谈债务上限的问题？
They will argue a lot and then they'll pass the debt ceiling because there's no choice. They have to or government shuts down. But the question is, you're asking, is this a bad thing? And the answer is it's a horrible thing. It's very dangerous because this didn't start with President Biden. This started with President Obama. The really big deficits. And of course, if you borrow the money, you add additional money into the system, which means there's now what the economists would say, there's more dollars chasing fewer goods. If you have more money, the prices are going to go up. So this deficit spending is adding artificial money that doesn't exist into the economy, causing this inflation we're having right now. There's no question about that. And if the interest rates paid by the banks is less than the inflation, then we're losing money. Now, it's a serious concern. I would say, however, we need to put this in perspective because if we look at the other major economies of the world, the same thing is happening. So here's the US inflation, but here's the German inflation, here's the French inflation. So it's not comparing us to zero inflation, it's comparing us to every place else in the world. Basically, what this means is everybody's purchasing power is dropping. We don't have as much money as we used to have. And that all this borrowing is what's causing it. Now, what happens? Well, right now, much of the U.S. national debt is being financed by the Chinese. That $5 trillion or $3 trillion in the Chinese treasury has to be someplace. And what the Chinese government does is buys American debt, American treasury bills. So they're holding American debt. And what if they stop buying?
现在媒体报道说，中国或者其他国家已经抛售他们手上的美债。
Well, there's a huge dependency there. The Chinese treasury can't dump $5 trillion or $3 trillion, deflate their own currency. They couldn't maintain the peg if they did that. We're very much dependent on each other. And I know that we know that in the United States because of all the things we buy in the stores in China. I'm not sure the Chinese government is completely aware of how dependent they are on us.
那么您认为美国政府还会继续这样无止境的印钱，以应付庞大的支出吗？
I don't see any indication. Look, even President Trump had deficit spending. He's supposed to be a conservative, and he did it too. Not to the degree that the current administration is, but still too. President Obama did it. They've been doing this since Clinton. Clinton was the last president, to my knowledge, that had a balanced budget. And the debt service is a problem. Again, if it weren't for the fact that everybody else is doing exactly the same thing we're doing, I could see it to be a problem. Everybody's spending more money than they have. Europeans particularly, they've had the same problem we've had. There's a great little proverb in German. Es wird heißer gekocht als gegessen. You cook it hotter than you eat it. When we talk about these problems in theory, they always sound worse than they actually turn out to be because we adjust. And so it sounds terrible when we discuss it in theory. And then we see the practice, and it is rarely as bad as we thought it was. Here's a great example. Look at the situation in Europe right now with natural gas. The Germans were getting 30% of their natural gas from Russia. They shut it off. All of their natural gas tanks are now full. It sounded worse before they actually dealt with it. They immediately took action, and they have no problem. So we talk about inflation as being a really difficult issue, but is it? Or will we adjust? And I think we're probably going to adjust. I'm an optimist.
您说的调整是由谁来调整？由政府还是市场？
Yes, both. As inflation carries on, we're able to buy less. As we're able to buy less, then inflation goes down, and it sort of raises an equilibrium. We'll have to see what happens with government. I can't predict elections, but generally speaking, in the past, when we've had this kind of situation, people sort of come to their senses and say, we can't continue to spend like this. And you see big swings between conservatives and liberals. The liberals generally wanted to spend more, the conservatives wanted to spend less, traditionally. And if we have anything in this circle to anticipate, if history tells us anything, is that there would be a movement more toward conservative government.
目前市场上有一种声音说，可以克服通货膨胀或者无限印钞的一个方法是让美元回归金本位的货币体制。
There would be certainly lots of good arguments for that. When this dollar then becomes actually backed by something, the problem is that the economy is so large that that's just impossible. It can't possibly happen. There's not enough gold. The system is far too complicated for this to happen. Now, a lot of people are buying gold.
Even the central bank now.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to move back to the gold standard, but they're probably trying to stabilize the gold market. Because it goes up and down as well. I know, again, a lot of people buying gold, they assume that's a safe currency, a safe bet. I'm not sure. The biggest problem I have with buying gold is it doesn't produce anything. If I put my money into the stock market, it goes into companies. The companies invest that money, create value. If I put my money in gold, it sits there. It goes up and it goes down. You can't know. I will tell you this, I've done some research on this, and I have not been able to find any clear relationship between the value of the dollar and any economic data. You would think that the value of the dollar would follow the economics, but it doesn't. The reason any stock market works is because we have bad information. If we had good information, we'd know what the stock would be worth. There would be no speculation because everybody would know what it's worth. So the only reason the stock market and the currency markets work is because we don't know anything. We don't have enough information or we have bad information. And because of that, we're always guessing, and that's what makes it go up and down.
那么您的意思是我们每天读到的新闻和数据都是假的吗？
I'm sorry, I don't want to call it fake. It's not on purpose, but it's just not right. Again, I don't want to say that the way I've looked at this is hardcore scientific data, but I did look at the value of the dollar against various economic indicators present and then offset 3, 6, 9 months in a year. I could not find any correlation between any economic data and the value of the dollar at any particular time.
那现在政府出台的各项数据，比如 CPI、失业率等等，这些我常常会在视频里谈起，这也是不对的数据吗？
For inflation, that might work. For currency exchange rate, it doesn't. It's too much emotion. If the President of the United States sneezes, the dollar goes down. That's overstated, of course, but basically a lot of emotion in it. If people get nervous for no reason, then, and since 80% of the currency exchanges go through the dollar's always hit the worst. If Vietnam and Poland are having trouble, those exchange rates are going to go through the dollar. Nobody on the currency exchange is waving a bunch of Vietnamese dong and say, I'd like to buy Israeli shekels. There's no market to buy those. So what happens is the people sell the dong for dollars, and then the dollars are sold for the shekels. So all of these transactions are triangular, and that means the dollar gets hit every time anybody has any issues. So the dollar is going to fluctuate, and it's still going to remain the reserve currency. Humble but absolutely correct opinion. I'm joking with that. I don't know what it's going to do.
那我们从哪里才可以获得准确的信息？
I'm not sure I know of any source of information that I would say is 100% right all the time, because the media outlets all have an agenda, all of them. I think that rather than looking for the best information, probably the better idea is to evaluate the information you get carefully. I mean, if I hear something on CBS or on NBC, then I'm going to know that that's going to have a liberal slant to it. And if I hear something on Fox News, then I know it's going to have a conservative slant to it. So the idea is to take both of these in and then use your brain, right? You say, wait a minute, that can't be right. That doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it's wrong. Your intuition, your intellect will tell you when somebody's, as long as you're not kind of hung up in these liberal conservative stereotypes, you think about what you've been told and make decisions accordingly. Use your brain. That's why you got one.
我在我的视频里总是在讨论目前存在的各种问题。作为普通人，您认为我们需要担心这些问题吗？
And we should worry, because worry is what makes us take action. But is the world going to collapse tomorrow? Is the economic system going to collapse? No. Is the US dollar going to collapse? No. We will adjust. Will our standard of living go down? Yeah. It's going down right now. Go to the store and try to buy some eggs. Yeah, I mean, it has changed the way we're living. Is it permanent? No. We've had this before, and we've survived it. 1970s. We had interest rates of 12%. We're not even close to that. I mean, if you figure you're trying to buy a house with 12% interest rate, your house payment would be impossible. So I don't know what the rate is today. The Fed has raised it again, but probably 4%, 5%. Yeah, well, that's still below inflation, which means every day we're losing. Even if you have money in the bank, you're losing it every day. And that's a worry. But this will adjust out. It'll all work out. Well, we will certainly recover, but what we don't want is pain. I mean, we can recover bad or we can recover good. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We can recover with a great deal of suffering or we can recover otherwise. I have to say, quite frankly, if our government can get itself under control and cut this spending back. Well, no, that's not true. Let me say it another way. There's two ways to do it. They can cut spending or they can increase taxes. Personally, I would rather have them cut spending than increase taxes, but some way to balance the budget so they're not creating artificial money. Artificial money is money that just is not created by value, by our entire economic system creating productivity and value, but created by somebody just writing their name on the bottom of a piece of legislation saying, by the way, spend $1 trillion. because that just dumps more money in and just causes inflation. People think they're getting free money, but they pay for it later. So we can have this recovery come with a smooth transition, or we can have it be very painful with high unemployment and people losing their homes, inflation taking people's savings away. I would rather that didn't happen, but if it does, we'll recover. We did in 1929 after the Great Depression. We could do it again. I would prefer less pain.
请问您对我的观众在投资方面有什么建议吗？
Don't panic. Everything's okay. Again, I'll say it always sounds more serious than it actually turns out being. Be prudent. Be smart. Don't get afraid of bad news. We had at one time several years ago that the stock market fell. And I was talking to a guy, he was saying, oh, I've lost so much money in the stock market. So much money. And I said, did you sell anything? He said, well, no. I said, you haven't lost anything. Yeah, you don't have as little money as you thought you had. And furthermore, you never had as much money as you thought you had when it was up here either. Here's the secret of success. Buy low, sell high. A lot of people have a hard time with that advice because something happens in the market and they panic and they start to sell when the dollar's high or the stock market is high. And the answer is just wait it out. The stock market has never lost money in the long term. It's a little down right now, but I'm not selling anything. It's going to go back up.
我们是否还会再经历2008年的噩梦？
The 2008 nightmare, yeah, it's certainly possible. But I would also say that those who didn't sell in 2008 are better off now than they were then. This happens way too often, particularly for the small guys like us. The big guys know better. They buy low and sell high. And we see the stock market start to fall and we panic. And we get out and then we sell it when it's high and then we got to buy it back again. We sell it when it's low and then we got to buy it back when it's high. Trading on the daily stock market for normal people like us who don't do this every day is a bad idea. You buy for value for the long term and don't panic when things happen. So if another 2008 comes along, it might and we will recover. Just don't sell.
从教授的分享我们可以看出，教授是个乐观的人，对美国的未来还是很有信心的。上期节目教授谈到去美元化的问题，很多朋友持有不同的观点，这很好，我喜欢看到不同观点的碰撞，只要不进行人身攻击就好。谁都不是神，都有自己的局限性。作为财经博主，我认为不带偏见，非情绪化的了解正在发生的事情，对我们的投资决定才会有所帮助。也有朋友认为教授讲的不够深度，其实在访谈之前，教授问过我要讲什么样的程度，我觉得大部分人对这些都是一知半解的，而且我认为我们应该更关注的是这些问题对投资的影响，所以建议教授不要讲得太深奥。如果大家喜欢更深层次的探讨这些问题的话，请留言深度报道。也有很多观众持不同意见，我也会收集大家的问题，看看是否需要再做一次深度访谈。从留言中我的确看到很多情绪，一旦牵扯到美中关系，不管是政治还是财经，都会有很多情绪，而这种情绪正是投资领域的大忌。不知道大家有没有听说过，在资本主义经济体系下，经济危机的发生是周期性，也是必然的，不需要过多的政府干预，也会自然痊愈。这让我想起以前在国家森林公园里看到很多烧焦的树木，其实每隔5到25年，这些森林便会发生自然的火灾。这种自然火灾对森林十分重要，由于植被在燃烧的同时仍处于相对较少的数量，因此火灾规模也很小，使得较大的树冠在野火中仍可保持完整，森林依然存在。生态学家指出，人们努力镇压野火，反而埋下了下次野火愤怒反扑的祸根。经济危机也是同理吧，在经济危机中，自然淘汰一些有问题的企业和行业，整个体系才会变得更加健全和正常。现在政府越来越多的干预，我认为只会给未来埋下更大的隐患。我不相信政府和经济学家没有意识到这个问题，可是如果一切都和政治挂钩，自然就是政客们为维系眼下的虚假繁荣来换取选票的短期行为。如果美国和美元一直在这种恶性循环中，那么就真的是玩火自焚了。如果你喜欢这类话题的话，不要忘了点赞、订阅、打开小铃铛，这样就不会错过我以后的分享。感谢大家收看，我们下周6不见不散。